Hello all. Today we're going to learn about a Swiss luxury watchmaker, Omega. Most of us have already heard about this company. Let us know this company in a much better way. Omega SA is a Swiss luxury watchmaker based in Biel, Switzerland. Britain's Royal Flying Corps chose Omega watches in 1917 as its official timekeepers for its combat units, as did the American Army in 1918. Omega watches were the choice of NASA and the first watch on the moon in 1969. Omega has been the official timekeeping device of the Olympic Games since 1932. James Bond has worn it in films since 1995. Other famous Omega wearers, past and present, include John F. Kennedy, Prince William, and Buzz Aldrin. Omega is owned by the Swatch Group. The forerunner of Omega was founded at La Chaux-de-Fonds, Switzerland in 1848 by 23-year-old Louis Brandt, who assembled key-wound precision pocket watches from parts supplied by local craftsmen. He sold his watches from Italy to Scandinavia by way of England, his chief market. After Louis Brandt's death in 1879, his two sons Louis Paul and Caesar, troubled by irregular deliveries of questionable quality, abandoned the unsatisfactory assembly workshop system in favor of in-house manufacturing and total production control. Due to the greater supply of manpower, communications and energy in Biel, the enterprise moved into a small factory in January 1880, then bought the entire building in December. 2 years later, the company moved into a converted spinning factory in the Gurzelin area of Biel, where its headquarters are still situated today. Their first series produced calibres Labrador and Gurzelin, as well as the famous Omega La Calibre of 1894, would ensure the brand's marketing success. Louis Paul and Caesar Brandt both died in 1903, leaving one of Switzerland's largest watch companies with 240,000 watches produced annually and employing 800 people in the hands of 4 young people, the oldest of whom, Paul Emil Brandt, was not yet 24. Brandt was the great architect and builder of Omega. His influence would be felt over the next half-century. The economic difficulties brought on by the First World War would lead him to work actively from 1925 towards the union of Omega and Tissot, then to their merger in 1930 into the group SSIH, Geneva. Under Brandt's leadership and Joseph Rice's from 1955, the SSIH group continued to grow and multiply, absorbing or creating some 50 companies, including Lanco Alemania, manufacturer of the most famous Omega chronograph movements. By the 1970s, SSIH had become Switzerland's #1 producer of finished watches and #3 in the world. Up to this time, the Omega brand outsold Rolex, its main Swiss rival in the luxury watch segment, although Rolex watches sold at a higher price point. Around this time, it was viewed as Rolex versus Omega in the competition for the king of Swiss watch brands. Omega watches tended to be more revolutionary and more professionally focused, while Rolex watches were more evolutionary and famous for their mechanical pieces and brand. Weakened by the severe monetary crisis and recession of 1975 to 1980, SSIH was bailed out by the bank in 1981. During this period, Seiko expressed interest in acquiring Omega, but nothing came out of the talks. Switzerland's other watchmaking giant, Allgemeine Schweizerische Uhrenindustrie AG, ASUAG, supplier of a large range of Swiss movements and watch assemblers, was in economic difficulty. It was the principal manufacturer of a Bosch unfinished movements and owner through their sub-holding company General Watch Corporation GWC of various other Swiss watch brands including Longinus, Rado, Certina and Mido. 2 years later, this holding company was taken over by a group of private investors led by Nicholas Hayek. Renamed SMH, Société de Microélectronique et Horlogerie, this new group over the next decade proceeded to become one of the top watch producers in the world. In 1998, it became the Swatch Group, which now manufactures Omega and other brands such as Blancpain, Swatch and Breguet. observatory trials focused on the science of chronometry and the ability to make chronometers measure time precisely. Only Patek Philippe and Omega participated every year in the trials. Omega's performances at these competitions garnered the company a reputation of precision and innovation. For more than a decade, 1958 to 1969, Omega was the largest manufacturer of COSC chronometers. Omega developed the slogan Omega Exact Time for Life in 1931, based on historical performance at the observatory trials. Omega's early prowess in designing and regulating timing movements was made possible by the company's incorporation of new chronometric innovations. In 1947, Omega created the first 2 billion wristwatch caliber in the world with the 301. 12 of these movements were made intended for inclusion in the observatory trials in Geneva, Neuchâtel, and Kew Teddington, and they were known as the Omega Observatory 2 billion. Unlike conventional tourbillon movements whose cages rotate once per minute, the 301's cage rotated one time each 7.5 minutes. In 1949, one of these delivered the best results ever recorded by a wristwatch up to that time. A year later, Omega broke its own record in the Geneva Observatory trials of 1950. On January 17, 2013, Omega announced the creation of the world's first movement that is resistant to magnetic fields greater than 1.5 Tesla, far exceeding the levels of magnetic resistance achieved by any previous movement. Most anti-magnetic watches utilize a soft iron Faraday cage which distributes electromagnetism in such a way that it cancels the effect on the movement contained within. Omega has instead built a movement of non-ferrous materials, eliminating the need for such a cage and providing a far greater resistance to magnetic fields. Selection of the Omega Speedmaster Professional Chronograph for American astronauts was the subject of a rivalry between Omega and Bulova. All subsequent manned NASA missions also used this hand-wound wristwatch. NASA started selecting the chronograph in the early 1960s. Automatic chronograph wristwatches were not available until 1969. Even so, all the instrument panel clocks and timekeeping mechanisms in the spacecraft on those space missions were Bulova Accuratrons with tuning fork movements because at the time NASA did not know how well a mechanical movement would work in zero gravity. The Omega Speedmaster Professional Chronograph was the first watch on the moon worn by Buzz Aldrin. Although Apollo 11 Commander Neil Armstrong was first to set foot on the moon, he left his 105.012 Speedmaster inside the lunar module as a backup because the LM's electronic timer had malfunctioned. Buzz Aldrin elected to wear his, and so his Speedmaster became the first watch to be worn on the moon. Armstrong's watch is now displayed at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. Aldrin's is lost. He mentions in his book, Return to Earth, that when donating several items to the Smithsonian Institution, his Omega was one of the few things that was stolen from his personal effects. In the TV series KOJAK, 1973 to 1978, lead actor Telly Savalas wore a gold-plated Omega Time Computer 1, the first mass-produced LED watch. Omega has been associated with James Bond movies since 1995. That year, Pierce Brosnan took over the role of James Bond and began wearing the Omega Seamaster Quartz Professional Model 2541.800.00 in the movie GoldenEye. In all later films, Brosnan wore an Omega Seamaster Professional Chronometer Model 2531.800.00. The producers wanted to update the image of the fictional super spy to a more distinctly sophisticated Euro look. Daniel Craig, the current James Bond since Casino Royale, also wears the Omega Seamaster. The Seamaster Planet Ocean Model 2900.50.91 in the first part of Casino Royale, and the Seamaster Professional 300M Model 2220.80.00 in the latter part from traveling to Montenegro. Omega has frequently been the official timekeeper for the Olympics, beginning with the 1932 Summer Olympics. It was the official timekeeper for the 2006 Winter Olympics and the 2008 Summer Olympics, and did the same for the 2010 Winter Olympics. For For the 2008 Olympics, Omega brought out an Olympic edition with its logo on the second hand. Olympic swimmer and multiple gold medalist Michael Phelps is an Omega ambassador and wears the Seamaster Planet Ocean. Omega is also the official timekeeper for the 2012 Summer Olympic Games. Providing support to Emirates team, New Zealand and representing the team's official watch, in 2007 Omega introduced the Seamaster NZL 32 chronograph with a name suggested by the name of the boat that won the America's Cup in 1995. On July 1, 2011, Omega became the official timekeeper of PGA of America through the signing of a 5-year agreement that will carry through 2016. In 2014, Omega became the official timekeeper of the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympic Games. So we got to know about the various aspects of Omega. We went through the company's history to its present day scenario. Hope the information was useful and have a good day.